From Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson with you. Ahead today, K-State's Ajay Sharda will talk about his research on the performance capabilities of precision crop planters, and specifically how individual row seed metering can be operated for more uniform stand establishment on irregular-shaped or contoured fields, and how variable planter downforce allows you producers to cross fields at higher speeds. Also, K-State's Rodrigo Onofre will look back at the leading crop disease issues in Kansas this past growing season, how those might figure into your disease management for your 2021 crops. And on this week's horticulture segment later on, K-State's Londa Nwadike previews a series of farmers market workshops coming up in mid-February. All that and more here on Agriculture Today.
A social distancing tip.
Putting distance between yourself and others is critical to slowing the spread of coronavirus. So here are ways to stay in contact without the physical contact part. Call, send a text, set up a video conference, post on social media, dedicate a song on the radio. If you have symptoms of fever, dry cough, and shortness of breath, call your healthcare provider before going to their office. For more info, visit coronavirus.gov.
Let's all do our part, because we're all #AloneTogether. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
You're tuned in to Agriculture Today. We always appreciate you listening in. And first up for you today, an update on precision planter technology. This will be a topic that our guest is taking up at a Kansas corn school online later on this evening, and we'll be telling you about that. We've welcomed back in precision agricultural engineer Ajay Sharda, K-State Research and Extension, who's conducted a fair amount of work in this area of planter advances. And Ajay, what angles are you working on in as far as the new style planters and what they can bring to the producer?
Yes, Eric, thank you. A couple of things which we are trying to focus our energies right now is to bring to the table the components which have put more value for producers. So we have a technology, we have electric seed meters, we have hydraulic downforce systems. We have talked about a lot about this in the past, and how good these seed metering systems are, how good these individual road hydraulic downforce systems are in terms of managing your seeding depth. Metering system can do a good deal in terms of population and the seed spacing aspect of it. We've talked a lot about how you can really extend the capabilities, when you have a system like that. So we are trying to put more value. A couple of things we are looking at. One value we are looking at is very similar to when we have these section control technologies, right? Now we have these turn compensation or contour farming, whatever different people or different manufacturers say that. But the ability of each row unit to moderate the speed of that meter based on its individual speed when it is turning on tight turns, planting along the contours. We have a lot of fields which are so much irregular in Kansas as well. Mm-hmm. So we didn't have a whole lot of a solid number in terms of what are we looking at, how much area we probably can end up planting in terms of those curvilinear paths, so as to say.
And what difference does that make in terms of seed placement and population then?
Absolutely. That's the bottom line, because that's going to drive our yields, right? So what we did, we looked at numerous fields, couple of 20, 30, 40 acre fields, couple of 70, 80, 100 acre fields, and some 130, 140 acre fields. Some were more irregular versus, others. Some were more rectangular but have more waterways and passes where you have to slow down and speed up kind of a thing. But in general, to be honest, that was not something I was expecting. But anywhere between 4.5% to 12% of your area could fall under the curvilinear planting conditions. Mm-hmm. So even 4.5% area is a whole lot of area, right? If you're talking about 10%, that's a pretty substantial area if I did not end up planting in the right manner. How costly my seed is, how costly my technology is, and how costly my nutrient starter fertilizer is, and how much effort I have put in to get all these pieces together to get in the right spot. And if 10% of the area is not planted right, then we're going to pay some penalty on yields.
Yeah. Can the uneven placement be compensated for then through the technology that be? Or is that something for on down the road, so to say?
No, that's exactly what our goal in terms of really putting some additional piece of information for our producer is, that if we have electric seed meters, they come inherent. I may be a little cautious about all the different variables or variants which are available in the market. But if you go with that, turn compensation component is a very, very minimal cost. It's just inherent ability of that individual row unit to know what speed it is going at, and it runs that specific meter to match the population. It has nothing to do with the meter on the right. It has nothing to do with the meter on the left. So this is a natural way the meters are set to operate. So if we have electric seed meters, now we will be sure that irrespective of how you plan, how much area you plan in a curvilinear path, that every single acre or every single row will be at the right population and seed spacing and depth part of it.
So that's an exciting aspect that you're still trying to refine through your research, and you'll be talking about that at this Corn School session tonight as well. You have also, as you noted, AJ, in recent years been working with the downforce adjustments that precision technology can allow row-by-row basis here. Right. What's the latest on that front?
Well, the next step was, from our perspective, I would say probably two things. One was, how should I implement my technology? Like, how much downforce is, good enough for me to go out and plant? This is a fourth year, but third year of comprehensive, looking at what downforce does. So we have really nailed down or come to a kind of a, sweet spot. And I'm going to talk a little bit more specific to, the fields which are in and around Manhattan area. We have good soils. We got good moisture. We don't have a whole lot of, rough, deficit moisture fields. And in this condition, if we keep our gauge wheel loads, or what we call as margins, in the range of, 180 pounds to 200 pounds, you can be rest assured that you can plant at 7.5, 8 miles, that your planter performance is going to be exactly the same. So what that means is that suddenly you have a leverage to go 25% faster, or 50% faster, if you want to go at 8 miles and if you're going at, 5 miles. What that brings to the table is that if you have shorter windows, you can finish your planting, much ahead of your schedule, or you can time it that way, knowing that my technology can comfortably plant, at that speed. So that is another thing which we're going to talk again, because we have the technology, people have it, we have talked about how good it is, but how many people are really driving at 7 and 8 miles, right? Not many. We are still driving at 5, 6 miles.
Old habits die hard.
There you go. Well, again, the thing is, I don't blame you, or I don't blame anybody, because it's sometimes, a couple of $100,000 worth of seed and nutrient, and I don't want to make any mistake, in terms of how I want to put my seed and fertilizer in the soil. But we have so much data now, we have so much information, and this information we'll be more than happy to share, and people can talk to people we work with. And so much data on spacing and depth and emergence and the stand uniformity and all that part. So that is putting a lot of confidence in our mind that if we select a good downforce, again I'm saying good means initially a lot of perception was that even 70, 80, 100 or maybe 120 pound was good enough, but that may work. But if you want to plant at 5 miles, right, it is not too much forgiving. So if you add that another 60, 70, 80 pounds, get in that 175, 180 pound range in 2 pound, that'll be so much forgiving in terms of speed aspect of it.
So that's a mature technology. Generically here, what's the next big thing in precision planter technology?
I would say there are a couple of things which precision planting, they have been talking about variable depth planting now. So since there's, seed farmers, smart farmers, those smart farmers can give you an estimation of what the soil moisture is. And then based on that, you can modify those row units can actually on the go, you can adjust the depth of those row units and you can plant in the moisture zone. So I think that's one thing. The other thing which a lot of people are thinking about is uniform stand count has a lot of precedence on many other things. If you have good technology, if you do it all right. So there is definitely an advantage to that when we say that I have a uniform emergence, right? So that is something which is, off question. We want to see the contribution of all other components which are within the planter technology, which might be impacting, how my seeds get treated, while planting, whether it is row cleaners or, my closing wheels or all other aspects. So now it's about optimizing the performance of every single component within the row unit and managing our crop inputs, especially the nutrient part of it, to really give a boost to both yields and stands.
Always more to learn, but you've uncovered a great deal on the performance of these units already. And again, you'll be sharing thoughts on planter technology this evening at this Kansas Corn School online and welcoming questions from participants. Thanks, AJ, for the update.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you so much.
Precision Agricultural Engineer, K-State Research and Extension, that's Ajay Sharda. And incidentally, if you'd like to take part in that Kansas Corn School, at which AJ will be passing along thoughts on planter technology, you can still do so. You need to go to this web address and register right away for this evening's session starting at 7. That address is kscorn.com/corn school, kscorn.com/corn school. We'll return with more shortly on Agriculture Today.
With the shortage of primary care physicians, especially in rural areas, health education and disease prevention are vital. K-State Research and Extension programs address quality of life, personal development, and health behaviors across all life stages of all social economic groups. To learn more about health education, one of K-State Research and Extension's 5 grand challenges, visit www.ksre.ksu.edu.
We're back now on Agriculture Today, and we're still weeks away from the first row crop plantings in Kansas, of course. But it's a good time here to offer a review of the disease challenges facing you corn, soybean, and grain sorghum growers this past season, 2020, what we might pick up from that as we look ahead to 2021. We're welcoming in now for the first time a K-State plant pathologist, Rodrigo Onofre, who is serving in a capacity of row crop disease specialist for research and extension as well. Rodrigo, tell us more about your assignment as you're serving Kansas producers now, if you would.
Well, Eric, first, thanks for having me over here. I'm very happy to be here today. Yeah, so I'm a postdoc here at K-State Plant Pathology Department. And this coming season, I'm going to be working with the row crop, corn, soybean, and sorghum disease and helping our growers to move through it and our agents, of course.
The general overview of 2020 as far as row crop diseases went, it was not a heavy disease year, was it, by any stretch?
Yeah, that's correct. It was a lower disease across soybean and corn. We had some outbreaks. We're going to be going over them, but yeah, it was overall a lower disease than the past years.
Well, let's get right to the corn scene then, and what stood out. Which ones would you highlight?
Yeah, well, the number one last season that we saw in corn was southern rust that came into the state. This disease is one of them that moves across the state, and we saw high levels of disease severity and incidence from southeast Kansas up to northeast Kansas and moving across all the corn regions.
and it's a foliar disease, obviously. How intense was the damage that it inflicted where it was present? Do we have an idea on that?
Yeah, the damage was above average. However, in some locations, it came in late, arrived late, and that contributed to a lower damage in terms of yield loss. Where the disease arrived earlier, it had a higher potential of causing a yield loss for those locations.
What about other corn pathogens that we commonly see? And one that's cited seemingly year by year, Rodrigo, is gray leaf spot. It was fairly light compared to historical trends?
Yeah, gray leaf spot was relatively light. And again, this disease, it really depends of where you are and what grow system you're having. Because it's usually if you have corn on corn and you had a problem in the previous seasons, you might have higher chance to have a problem again. So this is a good highlighted for the upcoming season, right? So if you had gray leaf spot problem last season, this is something to keep in mind now. And scouting disease for corn is our best batch. Finding out the correct identification. Some of them can be tricky. If you're thinking about bacterial leaf streak and gray leaf spot, they can be confusing. And working with your extension agents, sending us the samples here at the Plant Diagnostic Lab, it's our best batch and how we can help you the most.
And because of dry conditions, stalk rot was prevalent in row crops in general. Was corn susceptible to stalk rot last year?
Yes, corn was affected, especially by Fusarium, one of the most common stalk rots here in Kansas. So it's something to keep in mind too. If you had a problem last season, again, correct identification is important. So if you're suspicious that you're having stalk rot problem this season, send the samples to us and we'll find the correct identification for it.
On to soybeans, Rodrigo, then. Sudden death syndrome has stricken fear in producers for some years now. Thankfully, last year, SDS was a lesser problem than normal, it sounds.
Yeah, that's correct. And it's a disease that we are seeing more and more on the northeast Kansas, especially on the River Valley location. Or if you are having soybean under irrigated system, those are places where you're going to see more of the disease. And if you have a rain event right at that bloom growth stage, you might also expect to have some symptoms, some visual symptoms on the foliar later on. And if you had a problem with SDS this past season, the best batch for this upcoming season, if you're going over with soybean again, is to have seed treatment. Apply a seed treatment so you're covering that for this upcoming season.
But if you have had SDS in previous years, but last year it wasn't as intense, that's not a reason to ignore the possibility of it returning, is it?
That's correct. It's if you had it before, the pathogen can overwinter and survive in the soil and be there, just waiting for the perfect environment conditions to develop. And related to SDS, we also have SCN, soybean cyst nematode, right, which is one of the limiting disease here in Kansas. The numbers with SCN in our surveys and grower samples that we have seen is that it's been increasing lately in the frequency of samples that are sent to us. So it's also something that we have in mind for this upcoming season.
Let's stay with that for just a moment then, because K-State Research and Extension facilitates the soybean cyst nematode sampling program, and part of the mission here in visiting today is to remind producers that they can take full advantage of that, Rodrigo.
Yeah, that's correct. The best option here for us is to work with your extension agents and having them to advise you how to get your best sample from your fields and send that over to us so we can process and see if it's present or not, because knowing your population and know if it's present in your field, it's your best option for management to think about what's the next steps, right? Do I have to go for a more resistant variety? Do I have to do crop rotation? What's my level right now? So it's very important to determine those thresholds.
And those samples can be submitted Any time now, or does one need to wait till closer to planting time?
Anytime from now on, as early as possible, will be better for you, so you have more time to plan for your upcoming season. Because if the numbers are high, you might have to switch a variety or think about some management strategy that you could do for soybean cyst nematode.
Again, your point of contact for that sampling is your local extension agricultural agent. They can help walk you through the procedure and get those samples to K-State for that important analysis. Before we leave soybeans, noting as well, Rodrigo, that charcoal rot was also evident this past growing season.
Yeah, so soybeans we will have as a charcoal rot, right? It's one of the major diseases in terms of soy-borne disease that we also see here. And with charcoal rot, what happened last season is that we had very dry conditions later on in the season, and that was very favorable for charcoal rot development. For this upcoming season, it will all depend on the weather. If we had a very high temperatures, dry stress at the end of the season, we might see it again. And if you had problems with charcoal rot last season, it's something to keep in mind for this upcoming season. Perhaps you might have to lower your population, avoid water stress. If you have the conditions of being irrigated, it might help to reduce the disease development and pressure of charcoal rot on your fields. So it all depends of how the weather will be for this upcoming season. If it's wet right in that planting time, right, we might be seeing some seedling disease coming up. The recommendation is if you had seedling disease problems before, it's to wait until the temperatures are above 55, and that's the soil temperature, minimum soil temperature above 55. So that's one way to avoid that seedling problem in the beginning if the conditions are wet and cold. And also seed treatment, it's a good option if you have had any seedling disease problems.
We'll finish up with a quick word on grain sorghum diseases, Rodrigo. The pressure there was relatively low overall. There were a few problems, though?
Yeah, we saw a few problems that we've seen mostly every year. Sooty stripe, we saw it across several locations here. But also stalk rot was one that we heard some reports across Kansas. We also saw a little bit of it and received some samples here at K-State. But overall, it was very low in disease as well.
Well, the concluding message here to producers is they should take some time to review how things fared in their fields this past year in regard to diseases in soybeans, in sorghum, in corn, and make according plans, right?
That's exactly. And if you have any questions, you can always send us a sample for us to look. That's the best option. And also work with your extension agent, and they can help you to identify if you need a sample, send us samples to us here, and we go from there.
We'll look forward to visiting with you on a regular basis during the growing season, Rodrigo, finding out what's going on specifically out there across the countryside and how producers might respond to those disease issues that might rise. Many thanks to you.
Thanks again for the opportunity. I'm looking forward to visiting with you again, and keep an eye on for the diseases that are coming up this coming season.
He's Rodrigo Onofre, K-State plant pathologist. And we'll return with more here on Agriculture Today.
Have you ever thought about where your food comes from? If you're thinking the grocery store, think again. Facts show that the American farmer feeds more than 129 people.
They are continually increasing and improving their operations. A wide variety of crops and livestock are grown in Kansas as well as the United States, providing food to your dinner plate.
Next time you see a farmer or rancher, thank them. For more information, contact K-State Research and Extension.
Welcome back to Agriculture Today. Over this, the K-State Radio Network. Eric Atkinson with you. On now to today's agricultural news headlines in brief for you, courtesy in part of DTN. President Joe Biden has committed to moving the U.S. economy to net zero carbon emissions by the year 2050. The president's executive order last week specifically called for getting farmers and livestock producers engaged in climate-friendly practices, as it was put. Now, the president's nominee for USDA Secretary Tom Vilsack spoke at length about this during his nomination hearing Tuesday in Washington, D.C., talking about ways to incentivize farmers to reduce greenhouse gases from agriculture. As an industry, agriculture accounts for just under 10% of U.S. greenhouse emissions. Vilsack said he supports the president's vision on agriculture becoming a net zero industry and said it would provide market benefits for U.S. farmers. Vilsack later added that it would become an export market imperative for both the grain and livestock industries to adopt better and verifiable practices to regenerate soils, lower emissions, and reduce practices and inputs that lead to higher emissions. Vilsack also committed to Congress that any actions on climate involving farmers should be voluntary. Farmers and ranchers should be paid for reducing emissions through a market for carbon sequestration, he says. And he says that the producer should also reap the rewards, not companies that run carbon credit markets. Vilsack suggested establishing an advisory group of farmers that could help create a plan to compensate producers for capturing greenhouse gases in the soil. He said there will be an aggressive effort to get input from producers on all of that. Now, as a sidebar, a soil scientist at Colorado State University, Keith Postian, has spent his career studying carbon life cycles from crops and agricultural emissions. Postian said he's seeing more immediate urgency to get an effective market established for agriculture now. He points out, though, that farmers building carbon in the soil is not a silver bullet to lowering greenhouse gases across the U.S. economy. With agriculture, carbon sequestration may not even take up 5% of the problem, he says, but proponents say that it is a cost-effective solution for reducing emissions. He said, quoting him, "There's not going to be a single solution, so let's deploy things across the board that work and have a lot of other co-benefits." Mandatory country of origin labeling was implemented and then ceased under USDA Secretary Tom Vilsack's first round at the USDA under the Obama administration, and that issue resurfaced in his Tuesday session with lawmakers. Asked by Senator Deb Fischer of Nebraska about the Product of USA label deployed by the USDA and whether it's evolved and kept up with consumer expectations, Vilsack said the answer to that is no. He said that every effort has been made to create better transparency, better information for consumers, understanding and appreciating that consumers want to know where their food comes from. He said they want to know when they're buying U.S. and when they're buying from someplace else. Now, specifically on cool, Vilsack responded to Fisher and to a separate question from Senator John Thune, saying that he's willing to listen to any ideas on how to get a point where the WTO doesn't again declare it illegal or that it creates retaliatory impacts on American agriculture. And pushing ahead with cool will prompt retaliation from Canada and Mexico, something Vilsack said was not a good outcome. The process is underway or will start soon for farm organizations to study the 2023 Farm Bill. The USDA's Rod Bain has more.
A new Farm Bill will soon be crafted, even as 2018 Farm Bill programs continue to roll out. Little modification was performed on farm safety net programs when the current Farm Bill was created and signed into law. Yet commodity and ag organizations and their constituents are already discussing, or will soon discuss, what should be included in the commodity title of the 2023 Farm Bill. This is Tim Lust of the National Sorghum Growers.
Core portion of our work is always on the Title I programs and continue to be visiting with our leadership and our membership and working through how could programs be changed or tweaked going forward to take care of the needs of our growers.
Some, like Rob LaRue of the National Farmers Union, wonder about considerations to strengthen the farm safety net after 2020 offered its share of dynamic events.
Do our safety net programs really afford the kind of protection that farmers and ranchers need?
I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
Now with the Kansas soybean update, here's Greg Akagi.
Brad Doyle is a soybean farmer from Weiner, Arkansas, and also serves as vice president of the American Soybean Association. Brad, we're less than a month away from the 2021 Commodity Classic. Obviously different this year because it's going to be a virtual classic.
We're getting very excited, making final plans for Classic. This year will be a 4-day event, all online. We will have 2 days of general sessions followed by the educational programs that you've all known and appreciated available at Classic.
And what are going to be some of the highlights for this year's events?
So as of right now, we do have the new Secretary of Agriculture incoming. Tom Vilsack is invited. As long as his appointment is confirmed prior to the show, he has already been contacted and looking forward to being there and giving us updates on the new administration plan, and very excited to hear what he has to offer.
And I'm sure there's going to be, as always, a lot of educational sessions that will take place.
It's going to look a little different in the way that you see the sponsors of the show. It will be limited, but those sponsors are going to have many chances to share with you new exciting techniques, farming, precision ag, new products, new cultivation equipment, harvesting equipment. The normal things that we have, the interaction we have on the trade show floor will be involved in all of those educational series. It's a great opportunity on the floor to visit with the engineers of those products, the inventors. But this year we will have some chat features that will be available where you can invite them, in a private conversation and learn more about their company, more about their products and innovations.
So if people want to register for this year's Commodity Classic, what's the best way for them to do that?
Great announcement will be on our www.commodityclassic.com. I encourage you to take advantage of the free farmer registration up to the first 5,000 farmers. Industry and non-farmers do have a $20 registration fee, which is very affordable, but I would encourage you to go ahead and get access. That way, you will receive the most up-to-date information via email and announcements as followed by the agenda just to get you prepared to be able to interact when the show does come to us.
That is Brad Doyle from Weiner, Arkansas. He serves as Vice President of the American Soybean Association, and he joins us on the Kansas Soybean Update. It's brought to you by the Kansas Soybean Commission.
Thanks, Greg. And this is Agriculture Today.
Social distancing slows the spread of coronavirus, so stay a minimum of 6 feet away from others and stay home if you can. More info at coronavirus.gov. Let's all do our part, because we're all #AloneTogether. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Agriculture Today continues now with our weekly horticulture feature, but something a little bit extra for you today. We're going to look ahead to an event which will take place soon and virtually, designed for those who are interested in farmers markets as vendors, and in fact anybody wanting to market production from a farm or a ranch. This is a series of farmers market workshops, and it's being put on by K-State Research and Extension in cooperation with the Kansas Department of Agriculture. Joining us, one of the coordinators, Londa Nwadike, is a food safety specialist for K-State. Londa, this is an extension of a program that's been going on for a few years now. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. We've been doing regional farmers market vendor workshops across the state of Kansas for the past, I think, 6 or 7 years now. But, now this year due to COVID, we're having to do them virtually. So this should offer an opportunity for people selling at farmers markets and also any direct-to-consumer sales. We know that during COVID, a lot of people were using Facebook and were using online methods to sell food products directly to consumer. So this workshop will not only cover farmers markets, but it will also cover direct-to-consumer sales. So this year we're having to do it online rather than doing it in person in different locations across the state.
Very well. Well, there are 4 sessions that will take place over 4 days' time, Tuesday, February the 16th through Friday, February the 19th. The first session on the 16th will be right up your alley, food safety, Londa.
That's right. Yep. So from noon to 1 on February 16, we're going to be talking about food safety for value-added food products. So things like salsa, baked goods, jams and jellies, any sort of kind of value-added product will be covered. We'll also be talking about the Kansas Value-Added Foods Lab at K-State and what services they can provide to food processors as well.
So that's happening to get things rolling on the 16th of February. The next day, Wednesday, February the 17th, into the regulation venue.
Yeah, so on February 17th, again from noon to 1, we'll focus specifically on meat and poultry regulations. So again, during COVID, a lot of meat and poultry sales started to go direct to consumer, and a lot of online sales were happening. This session will be presented by the Kansas Department of Agriculture Meat and Poultry Unit, and they will talk, specifically about the regulations that are required for you to be able to safely sell meat products direct to consumer.
Very important to cover those details. Thursday the 18th, well, this gets into business transactions in a sense, but you're covering several items here, Londa.
Yes, exactly. So again, from noon to 1 on Thursday, February 18, we'll be covering sales tax. So the Kansas Department of Revenue will be speaking, and I will say from my experience, they actually can help you to save money on, the amount of sales tax that you have to remit as a direct-to-consumer producer, I guess the right term is. So you can learn just kind of directly from them about how you file your sales tax when you're a farmer's market vendor or selling direct-to-consumer. And it's great to really just get to meet them and know who to ask questions to as well. Then we'll also talk about accepting SNAP, what used to be called food stamps. So how you as a farmer's market vendor or, again, a direct-to-consumer salesperson can be able to accept SNAP funds as well.
And then the capstone, the main workshop on Friday, the 19th of February. That's where your keynote speaker comes in to give some great insight on direct-to-consumer sales, you say.
Yeah, so we're really excited again because it's virtual this year. It's easy to bring in a nationally recognized speaker. So we're bringing in Michael Kilpatrick. He has a Thriving Farmer podcast. So he'll talk about marketing tips for direct-to-consumer sales. So, it's, again, a great opportunity to hear from a nationally recognized speaker to just know how to improve your marketing of your direct-to-consumer products and at your farmer's market booth. In addition, KDHE will be on hand to talk about how COVID-19 has affected, how you can interact with the public and the safest ways to be able to do that. So that'll be nice to have somebody directly from KDHE speaking on that. We'll talk about the Double Up Food Bucks program, which is another program that can help at farmers markets to be able to increase your sales even more to low-income people. And then the Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Program, again, another program designed to help more seniors have access to being able to buy fruits and vegetables more easily. And then we'll just, KSRE and KDA will also be providing information on the resources that they have available. So really encourage everyone to join as many of these sessions as they're interested in and as they can have time for.
It really is loaded up with valuable information. As far as participating, you are asking for registrations in advance, correct?
Yes, that's right. And registration is $5. If the $5 is an issue, we do have scholarships available, but we do have an online registration site. If you don't have access to getting online, you could potentially contact your local extension office and they could probably help with that. Or the registration's available at fromthelandofkansas.com and then /FM workshop. So that should direct you to the website that you can register. And one other thing I'll mention in conjunction with registration, I guess two things. If you are using a scale to sell your products at a farmer's market, you can sign up when you register for how many scales you would like to get certified. That's a free service that we offer when you register for the workshop. And that's it can be anywhere from $40 to more per scale to get certified outside the workshop. So it's a good value to be able to do that for free. And then you can also sign up to receive free publications from KSRE on the regulations for selling food at farmers markets and direct-to-consumer sales. So we would like people to register by February 8, if possible, if they want to be able to get the publications before the workshop. And that'll help us with knowing how many scales we need to arrange for testing. The scales will be tested after the workshops. But yes, you can still register even up to that day. But if you want the publications before the workshop, we need a little bit of time to get them mailed out to you. So ideally by February 8, but we'll take registrations the day of as well.
The first 3 of the 4 sessions will run over the noon hour, noon to 1 o'clock each of the respective days. That main workshop will be a full morning program. Once more, this is the 2021 Farmers Market Direct-to-Consumer Virtual Workshops running from Tuesday, February the 16th through Friday, February the 20th. Great program that you've put together here, Londa. Thanks for letting us know about it right here.
And thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
She's the State Extension Food Safety Specialist for K-State. That's Londa Nwadike, telling us about these workshops coming up quite soon. Once more, go to the FromTheLandOfKansas.com website for further details and registration procedures. With that, our Thursday edition comes to a close. Again, thanks to you for tuning in. Please rejoin us here tomorrow, won't you? Until then, Eric Atkinson for Agriculture Today over the K-State Radio Network.